Great. Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome aboard. This is another wonderful week, and we are going to try to cover our three-step journey. Just a warning, we have two different cameras, so if you see me on twice, that's what's going on, just because the cameras doesn't seem to be working on the regular computer, and hopefully you're not getting an echo.
I am.
Oh, it's a sign that Hashem wants you to hear more than once.
That's what I need.
Maybe.
The more, the better.
Let's do. Ding, ding, ding. Let's try it the other way around. See if this works better.
This the last one? Oh, it's even worse.
Oh, gosh.
Okay. We're going to keep trying like this.
Okay.
And I'll turn this volume down. Hopefully that'll help. Okay. So, we're hopefully not getting too bad of a necker right now. And we're going to jump into our three-step program in which we are going to talk about what's going on in the Parshah this week, what's going on in the schedule of the calendar, the Yiddish calendar this week, and then, of course, one practical, relevant life message that we can take from Parshas Vayishlach. So what's going on in the calendar this week? For starters, my daughter, Kanainar bless her, she is just having a siyum this week. They had tested a full test for her in school on Parshas Lech Lecha. Here we go, Chana. We're very proud of you. And she's preparing a Dvar Torah for her siyum. And part of the story that she's going to talk about is the story of the Friediger Rebbe, who went into his father's room when he was 11 years old. It was a Shabbos morning, Parshas Lech Lecha. And his father was busy learning the Parshah, but tears were streaming from his eyes. And it was a very strange sight. On the one hand, he was learning Torah, and at the same time, he's tearing and he's pouring tears. He didn't know what to say, and he left. Later that evening, Motzai Shabbos, after Shabbos is over, so the custom was in those days, the previous Rebbe, 11 years old, every after Shabbos, he would go in to his father, and his father would test him in all the Mishnayos that he'd learned off by heart. And if he did well, he would get a gift. Whether it was a story he was told, or a written manuscript of a mimer. And that particular week, he got a gift. And after he got this transcript of a mimer, he hesitated. And he wasn't sure if he should leave or not. And the Rebbe's father, the Rebbe Rashab, noticed that he wasn't leaving. And he said to his son, his only son, he said to him, "What is it? Did you want to ask something?" So with that encouragement, he says to his father, "Father, I noticed something very strange this morning. You were learning the Parashah of the week, but you were streaming tears. What was going on?" So his father says to him, "These were tears of joy. These were tears of happiness." Why is that? So he told him the whole story of when the Alter Rebbe told his Chassidim, "Medarf leben mit der Zeit," one has to live with the times. And at the time, the Chassidim were in a big discussion. What does that mean, to live with the times? What is the Alter Rebbe talking about? Until eventually, the Alter Rebbe's brother explained what the Alter Rebbe had meant. And he explained that every week we have a Parashah of the week. And to live with the times means to live with whatever the Parashah is talking to us then. More specifically, every day of the week, we learn 1/7 of the Parashah, one Aliyah. Today being Monday would be the second Aliyah in Parshas Vayishlach. But that's what we want to live with this week in general. In general, this week we're living with the ever-relevant message of Vayishlach, a message of the eternal Torah, the dynamic Torah, the Torah which was the wisdom of Hashem. And that's why we are going to look at this week's Parashah for life messages. So that's one big event of this week's calendar, where Chana is going to be having a siyum. We're very proud of you, Chana. High five. Okay. What else is going on this week in the Parsha? We are also going to talk about what's coming up tomorrow night. Make that tonight, actually. Tonight and tomorrow, big day. Tonight and tomorrow is the 9th day of Kislev. The 9th day of Kislev is a double whammer. It's in a double excitement. It is the birthday of the Mittler Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe's son, Reb Doiv Ber of Lubavitch. He was the first Chabad Rebbe to actually make it to Lubavitch. Later on in his years, after Alter Rebbe passed away. And the Mittler Rebbe was the one who taught short sound bites of the deepest teachings of his father, the Alter Rebbe, and expounded and explained at length, making the secrets of the deeper element of the Torah accessible and understandable to the masses in a very big way. Some fascinating stories about how he was challenged by fellow Hasidic masters, including the Bedicheverov, who became his Mechutin, for how he could allow so much wisdom to be made available to so many people. But that's certainly our gain, and he was very confident in what he was doing. He had the full blessing of his father, the Alter Rebbe, and after him, we just continued to expound and explain more and more, to the extent that today we have even podcasts and memes that convey deep ideas of Chassidus, and they're designed there specifically just to help bring more and more people to understand what it is that the deep teachings of Chassidus can show us, which is one of the things we're going to do tonight. We're going to explore a Chassidic element of this week's Parsha. His birthday is tonight and tomorrow, but many years later, on that very same day, on the day of his birthday, is also the day of the Histalkos of the Mittler Rebbe, when the Mittler Rebbe passed away at quite a young age. And the Mittler Rebbe and his birthday and his Yom Histalkos is on the same day, which is a very unique setup, not common. We have similar by Moshe Rabbeinu, whose yard site is 7th of Adar, the same day as his birthday, which is a special thing in itself. We also have tomorrow night and the night after, tomorrow night and the day after, so which is Tuesday night, Wednesday this year, will be Yud Kislev, and again connect to the same Mittler Rebbe, the son of the Alter Rebbe, who the Alter Rebbe's Yom HaGeula, the day he was liberated from incarceration, from being in prison in Tsarist Russia, is coming up just the week after. But this week we will mark, celebrate, and draw energy from the excitement and the nace of the Mittler Rebbe's Yom HaGeula, the day of liberation. Fascinating story in itself, where the Mittler Rebbe had family members who were bent on trying to use blackmail, if you like, to force the Mittler Rebbe to work with them and to give them all sorts of mainly financial gain. And the Mittler Rebbe basically said to him, "I'm a man of truth, I have nothing to hide and nothing to be afraid of." And the fellow went and did all sorts of nasty things to try and frame his very own family, the Mittler Rebbe. This is after the Mittler Rebbe had lost his own father and was in a state of trying to rebuild, or re-strengthen, I should say, the Alter Rebbe's Chassidus. And here the Mittler Rebbe, who was a weak person in Begashmis, but a very powerful person in Beruchnis and Benefesh, extreme confidence, walked straight in. And there was all sorts of interrogations. He was taken apart, taken down to Vitebsk. And on the 10th of Kislev was the day where he was released. When they were preparing to celebrate one of the first anniversaries of this very special release and day of redemption for the Mittler Rebbe, the day before Yud Kislev was the 9th of Kislev, as we just said, the day of the Histalkos, the day when the Mittler Rebbe passed. And therefore, the day of the Geula was obviously a bittersweet reality. On the one hand, they had strong instructions from their Rebbe to celebrate the redemption and the release from jail. And at the same time, they were literally in extreme mourning, in the sense that it was still within the Shema. It was the day after the Histalkos of the Mittler Rebbe, and apparently this is when the song "The Rebbe Gehesin Freilach Sein" was invented, where the words in Yiddish mean that the Rebbe told us that we must celebrate, we must be happy, and it was almost like a wish, reminder, trying to come to terms with it. And this is one of the very special gifts that Chassidus gives to us, that even if things are sad, even when things don't look happy, somehow we need to allow ourselves to grieve on one hand, and yet at the very same day, at the very same time, look at what the Eibishter needs us to do at this very given moment and make the right choices at the right time. Just by way of example, in recent history, just last week when it was the Kinos HaShluchim, the conference and gathering of Shluchim from around the world, where the family of Shluchim was still within the Shiva, within the 7 days of Ratzvi Kogan Hashem Yinkum Domei, our fellow Shliach, who unfortunately was taken from us in the most brutal way, and it was still within the Shiva, where we would gather together to encourage each other, to celebrate, and even to dance. And this was done in the honor of, and for the schus of the family, for the neshama, and of course for all those who need comfort in general. So this is the one idea of Yud Kislev. It's a very powerful thing to allow us to open up ourselves to celebration, even if everything isn't figured out. Even if things are ongoing, this is one of the powerful things that Chassidus teaches us. Yud Kislev. It happens to be that this Shabbos is also a very big day. This Shabbos would be the equivalent of the Shabbos Kala or the Shabbos Ufruf, the Shabbos before the wedding, in which we will celebrate the anniversary on Sunday, Matzah Shabbos Sunday, of Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka and our Rebbe on Yud Dalet Kislev, the day of the wedding, which was an enormous wedding. It didn't take place in Russia or Ukraine. It took place in Poland, simply because that's where they could gather together. And it was an enormous, enormous event. Great Rabbanim, Talmidei Chachamim, Tzadikim, Rebbes of different Hasidim came and gathered together to celebrate this tremendous occasion. And clearly, one of the most clear, obviously missing people at the wedding was the parents of the Rebbe himself, who were not allowed, they were denied permission, exit visas, to leave then at the time, the former USSR, the Tsarist Russia. No, sorry, this was already after the, it was already after also. This would have been communist Russia. They were denied exit visas. So instead, Reb Leivik and his family made a massive wedding celebration back at home, just without the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin, without the Chassan and the Kala. And they celebrated non-stop. It was a big deal. They actually did renovations to the house. They had lived in it. They were living in a shared accommodation where one house had been divided into two, and the non-Jewish neighbor who lived on the other side of the house, understanding the occasion, moved out of the house to allow them to open up the walls that divided the house and to make a bigger space for the celebration to take place in honor of Yud Dalet Kislev. One of the famous things that we hold on to, the Rebbe referred to his own wedding day. He referred to it as the day of verbunden mir mit euch und euch mit mir, the day that connected me with you and you with me. So the Rebbe is talking to us, Hasidim, and he's telling us that he married into the previous Rebbe's family and connected with us on this very day. And you take it on a literal level, this marriage, this wedding, is what gave us the gift that we have today of a Rebbe that shared with us so much inspiration, so much direction and upliftedness. This is Yud Dalet Kislev coming up this Matzah Shabbos Sunday. So we have big things to look forward to. And now we're going to move on to what's going on in the Parshah this week, in Parshas Vayishlach. So on your screen, you should have a summary of the Parshah, which we'll go through briefly. Just highlighting some of the fantastic things to notice in the Parshah. We have the opening of the Parshah is almost exact to the skip one Parshah back. So we had last week, which was in between, but the week before finishes where Yaakov Avinu leaves the Holy Land of Eretz Yisrael, his father's home, and he travels miles and miles away to Mesopotamia, where he's going to go and meet the family of his mother, and he's going to stay at Uncle Lavan. And last week, which is the week in between, we spent an entire Parsha talking about that sojourn in those 20 years where Yaakov is away from home. This week's Parsha opens as Yaakov is coming back home, back to Eretz Yisrael. So it's 20 years on. In those 20 years, he's managed to establish himself as a person, both family-wise, where he's now married. He has actually 4 wives, but he has children. Each one of these are going to become the Shvatim. He has 11 out of 12 boys already born. He has a daughter, Dina, who's famously a person into her own. And he also has established himself as an extremely successful business person. He has enormous wealth, and he's traveling back. And as he's coming back home, all of a sudden, it's important for him to take into account the very reason he left home in the first place, which, as we remember, was the problem of Esav and his anger who had sworn in his heart to kill off his very twin brother Yaakov in our story. And although Yaakov had gone below the radar, gone quiet for 20 years, he still wasn't 100% sure that Esau was on the same page and had forgiven him. So he did have Hashem's promise to return home, and therefore he was going to return home regardless of. But before he does what he has to do from a human perspective, from a responsible point of view. He does his due diligence, he does his research to find out what's around the corner. And he sends off malachim, he sends off messengers to go and meet up with Esau and drop the little bits of information just to feel what he would sound like when he hears that Yaakov, his brother, is coming back to town. And the messengers come back with a very clear reading that Esau is not happy at all. He's actually not looking forward to making friends. Instead, he's looking forward to finally have it out, and he's gathering together a big army of all his henchmen, and he's going to come and pick a fight, a real heavy fight. He's looking to kill. And Yaakov obviously is very concerned about this, whether it would mean he'd survive, which would be the best scenario, but still it would be at the cost of all sorts of bloodshed. And God forbid, worse still, if someone in his own family would get hurt, or all of them. And therefore Yaakov makes a 3-step preparation. So he prepares himself for this encounter through davening to Hashem for a miracle. He then also does a plan A, which is he's going to kill him with love. He's going to wow his brother into so much care and love that he's going to be able to outmaneuver him with tactics that would encourage him to not want to even pick a fight. And therefore Yaakov prepares not just a gift, but he prepares a line of gifts, where one after the next, his messengers would come with big deliveries of Amazon haven't agreed yet, but of all sorts of goods that would have wowed his brother. And it wouldn't all be delivered in one day or in one moment. One round of delivery would come, and when Esau finished getting over the fact that he just got a fantastic gift, all of a sudden around the corner would come the next delivery, and then the next one, and then the next one, and this would be, hopefully, turn his heart. And actually, as we'll see soon, it was very successful. And then Yaakov had, at the end of the third option would be, the third preparation would be option B, if it still goes wrong. If Esau is still not moved and still bent on his war, then Yaakov made strategy, what would be his best plan under the circumstances, what would be his option, and he came up with an idea of splitting the camp, and that way he would be able to make a pincer move, or one team would be able to help out for the other team, and when worse comes to worse, at least half of them would be able to survive if they even picked a fight on one side. And this is as Yaakov is preparing the plot. And now he's moving in. And as he moves in closer and closer to the land of Eretz Yisrael, one of the places he has to travel is to cross one of the rivers. And the river Yabok in particular, Yaakov is going to cross in order to come towards Eretz Yisrael. And it's at this river where Yaakov reaches the river, and there's no bridge to cross. Yaakov personally acts as the human bridge, where he lifts one thing at a time and pushes it over, passes it over, and all night he's doing this. He's ferrying his family and his possessions across this river Yabok, so that they should be able to come to the other side and continue their travels homeward. And as the story goes, as everybody is already transferred over to the other side, there are some small jars, pachim ketanim, that remain to be moved over. And Yaakov goes back himself to pick up the small jars, and it's then that he meets the angel of Esau that wrestles with him. And as the Chazal tell us, this is obviously a mix between the physical and the spiritual, where the spiritual angel of Esau took on some level of human manifestation, of physical reality, tangible enough to be able to pick a fight and literally wrestle arm in arm with Yaakov. and eventually Yaakov pins him down. And Yaakov, the holy man that he was able to overpower an angel, a godly angel of Esau. And it was at that time where the angel of Esau says, fine, you win. Now let me go. Before he would let him go, the angel would hurt Yaakov in his thigh. This would be the nerve, which is the Gid Anosha, which until this day, says the Torah, the Yiddish people, we do not eat the rump of an animal because it has inside of it this sinew. And this is the part that Yaakov was hurt by, the angel of Esau. But the angel of Esau wasn't able to break free. And only after Yaakov tells him, I'll let you free if you give me your brachas, if you give me your blessings for the blessings that he got from Father. In other words, you concede that what I have from Father is correctly mine, then I'll let you go, which he did. And the angel also tells Yaakov that you are about to get a name upgrade. Your name is not going to be Yaakov. Hashem is about to tell you your name is going to be upgraded and changed to Yisrael. And that's when Yaakov lets him go. The sun shines, eventually heals Yaakov. And then this part of the story, Yaakov gets healed from that. But the next part of the story is also dramatic. And when Yaakov is finally in the land of Eretz Yisrael, he settles temporarily in the area called Shechem. And it's there that he runs into a major issue when his daughter Dinah ends up being taken by Shechem, the son of Hamor, in this particular area. And after being abducted, is raped and held captive. And eventually she's convinced to stay there, not before Shechem and his father try and backpedal and undo the wrongdoings that they've done by coming to Yaakov and the Shvatim and the brothers and trying to convince them that Dinah would be well to marry Shechem. And Shechem would be very interested to marry her because they are the princes and the kings of their area. It would be a very virtuous thing, or a commendable, it would be recognized as a chashuva thing for his daughter Dinah to marry Shechem. Now, of course, the family of Yaakov were particularly careful with who they married and to who they married, and certainly this sort of story where they talk about a person who was capable of rape and kidnapping to be the husband of Dinah was certainly not allowed. But it was also not only was it problematic in Yaakov's level of life, it was unacceptable behavior universally at that time. Although people were debased and behaved immorally, but people respected boundaries on some level. And kidnapping and rape was certainly out of the question. But because of Shechem and Hamor's high regard in their town, no one opened their mouth. In this particular instant, when Shechem and Hamor came to have a chat with Yaakov about keeping Dinah as Shechem's wife, Yaakov stalls for time and tells him, let's wait for the boys to come back from the field and we'll discuss it. And when Shimon and Levi come back and hear what happened, they say to Shechem, we'll do a deal. And the deal they do is, they say in our tribe, everyone must be circumcised, all males must be circumcised. If you guys in the entire town allow yourself to be circumcised like we do, then we can talk about and we'll have marriages, we'll intermarry, we'll be like one. Hamor and Shechem were so desperate, they went back and convinced the entire tribe to go ahead and be circumcised. And it was then that Shimon and Levi carried out the second half of their plot. On the third day after they'd all circumcised themselves, they went to war and took out the entire Shechem, the entire place. Yaakov was furious, and he turned around to his two boys and said, how could you do this? How could you do this? You've just upset all of the entire area, because it's not just Shechem that are going to get upset, all of the Canaanites. Everyone in the area are going to be worried that we're now starting wars. We've just come back to town, and we're already tearing places apart. They're going to think we're now coming to try and action Hashem's futuristic promise, and therefore they're going to be at greatest defenses, and they're going to come to war against us, and we don't want to go to war now. Yaakov davened, and Hashem helped, where the nations around, where the tribes did not. They were very upset, but did not come to war against them. Yaakov insisted that none of his children or anyone who was with him take any spoils from Shechem, leave everything behind, and that's when they moved on to travel first to Beis El, which was the place where Yaakov made his promise on his way out, that he would bring a offering of thanksgiving to Hashem if he was safe, and now he was safe, and he'd come back to Israel safely, and therefore he owed it to Hashem to bring an offering, which he does, and that's when, after this offering, Rachel, Yaakov's fourth wife, or first wife, gives birth to the 12th of the 12 Shvatim. She named him Benoni, but Yaakov calls him Binyamin. And unfortunately, during that childbirth, Yaakov's wife Rachel passes away in childbirth. And Yaakov buries her there on the journey in Vayishlach, on the roadside where she was buried. Until this day, there's Cave of Rachel, which is on the roadside. You go there. You also have a bit later more bad news that reached Yaakov, although this is a bit later on. That Yitzchak passes away at the age of 180, and in the end of the Parshah, we have the family tree of Esav and his children and children's children that are briefly mentioned in the Torah that help us with chronology and with family tree and also timing, so that we can know where Esav fits into the picture. But in a few short verses, we managed to get the entire family tree. And once we have that out the way, we then go into Yaakov's family tree in next week's Parsha and the stories that brought us down into Golos, into Mitzrayim, and all the way through. So that's Parshas Vayishlach in a nutshell. As you can imagine, the Ma'amarim, the discourses and the sichos on this week's Parsha are loaded with lots of different angles. What we're going to do today, we're going to focus on one particular area that would seem like a subtle detail, but actually has tremendous import to it. I'm going to ask you, go a little bit off topic, and just a light question. A question that is very much part of the Sikha, but it seems like it's just chatter, it's just talk. If you have been on a holiday away from home, that can mean to a hotel down the road, to the Lake District, maybe to Wales, maybe out of the country, maybe to Eretz Yisrael, anyway, if you've been on a holiday in the past 5 years, answer the question. If you haven't been on a holiday in the past 5 years, I give you a bracha that you should have a lot of holidays and a lot of traveling, and we should all go to Eretz Yisrael very soon. But here's the question. When you travel, if you do, what do you enjoy most about traveling? What is the most exciting, enjoyable? What's the most enjoyable part of traveling? Now, I can tell you what's not enjoyable about traveling, but that's not the question for today. The question for today is, what do you find enjoyable most about travel? Help me out.
Knowing that in about 2 weeks you'll be traveling home again, and it's really great and exciting because you'll be all comfy in your own home without any problems.
No, wow, I can see some of us really enjoy traveling.
Not.
Okay.
Not.
I would thought maybe you were saying that when you go away, you can appreciate home even more.
No.
Is that what you meant?
No, not what I meant.
Okay. I was trying.
Well, okay. No, it is nice to go and see family and grandchildren, etc. when you go away. But the nicest thing of all is being at home.
Okay. I'm going to say that I just heard something else. There are things that are enjoyable also about the trip. The people you get to see.
Right.
Okay. We can settle on that a little bit. Anyone else want to weigh on this? What would you find enjoyable most about travel? Gotta unmute. Hey, so gesund.
See, no one's really wanting to travel.
Okay. I'm going to say, for me, sometimes traveling is enjoyable in the sense that it gives me a break from the responsibilities of regular day, and also a change of seeing things that I haven't seen before, the unknown, the exploration, and discovering things that sometimes you can't even imagine, you would never have thought of, or things you can imagine and you never get to see, but through traveling we get to see things we haven't seen. Okay, there are some people who could add to that. I'm sure there are many people who have thoughts that come to the mind as we go along. Feel free to unmute if you feel so desire. But in the meantime, we're going to explore that actually there's a reason why Hashem designed that we live in one place and there are other places that we can go to. Plus, there are sometimes needs that make us travel elsewhere. Let's say it's children, or let's say it's, I don't know, business or whatever else that brings us to another place. And the aim of traveling could be very enjoyable, not just in the fact that it distracts us, but it could be very, very telling and informative for when we get back to how we should lead our life back at home. Let's read some psukim. We'll ask a few questions. Don't forget, this is the year in which we are delving into Rashi questions. When we say Rashi questions, we don't mean the questions that Rashi asks, but questions we ask on how Rashi words his comments. And the reason we ask these questions is because when we zoom in to how Rashi worded what seems to be a basic commentary, we can actually notice there's so much depth in every single one of the comments Rashi makes, and they are very informative. They're telling us messages for life. So we're going to look for a life message of the Parsha through delving into Rashi. So let's do this. Okay, so let's start off with our first text. Here we go. This is a text from, I think it's a change of slide, from this week's Parsha about when Yaakov finally comes back to the land of Eretz Yisrael. He's already sent the messengers and he's come back and he's preparing himself. He's made it into the Holy Land. And the first entry point in which he enters into Eretz Yisrael is in a place called Shechem. Nowadays in English they call it Nablus, but it was Shechem. And this is where Yaakov Avinu makes it in homeland. He's finally back. He's not at home because he still has to travel to where he's going to meet his father, Yitzchak, and the whole family. He was hoping to meet his mother also. Fortunately, he didn't make it there on time. But here he is, not at home yet, but he's out in his homeland. And there in Shechem, says the pasuk, Vayiken eschalkes asareh. He purchases the part of the field where he pitched his tent. Who does he purchase it from? From the sons of Hamor, father of Shechem, for 100 kesita. So the Torah tells us, although he hasn't got home, but because he needs to take a pitch stop, he needs to break for a little bit, so he pitches his tent. He doesn't rent space. He doesn't pitch his tent in the desert where it's no man's land. Instead, he buys himself a plot where he can call home for a little bit, temporary home, and he pitches his tent there. He's not going to stay for long, but he buys this piece of land. Now, I just want to ask you, if there's one word in this sentence that needs translating and the English didn't translate, which word are you going to say?
We didn't stay there.
Hint, hint. It's the last word in the sentence. Kasita. Okay, so you bought it for 100 kasita. Why do I say it's not translated? Because kasita is actually one of the words in the Torah that are extremely rare. I think in the whole 5 books of the Torah, this is the only reference. In Tanakh, there are another 2 references. One is talking about this story, and one's talking in Eov, where he mentions the word kasita. But kasita isn't a common word whatsoever. I mean, Chamor isn't a very common name either, but that's the name of a person, so it doesn't really need translating. But if he's purchasing for 100 kasita, that could do with a translation. Well, who's our friend? Who is the person, who is the commentary who we'll turn to when we need basic translation? Or in the words of Rashi himself, the 5-year-old who's learning Torah, who should he turn to? Rashi. Rashi's your friend. So what does Rashi say on this pasuk? Rashi tells us, what is a kasita? Says Rashi, kasita is a kohen known as ma'ah. Rabbi Akiva said, when I traveled to the cities of the sea, they called a ma'ah kasita. Okay? So we now know, says Rashi, that he bought the property for 100 kasita, means 100 ma'ah. Okay? Now, what is a ma'a is actually much easier to translate, because ma'a is a common word that is used in the Torah to describe a denomination of currency. A breakdown of 100 ma'a would make, 20 ma'a would make a shekel. So 100 ma'a would be 5 shekels. Okay, ma'a is Aramaic. The Hebrew word for ma'a would be geira, but in Mishnaic and Talmudic terms, ma'a is a much more common word. So Rashi wants us to know, what is a kasita? Kasita is a ma'a, which is maybe the equivalent of, a 20th, a 5 pence piece. Sorry, yeah, 5 pence, a 20 pence piece, because you need 5 ma'a to make 100 ma'a make 5 shekels. Yeah, each one is 20. But how do we know what kasita means? There are no psukim in the whole of Tanakh that Rashi can use that would tell us what kasita actually means. It helps us realize and appreciate Rashi's doing us a favor here. He's looking not so much in the 24 books of Tanakh, he's quoting from Chazal, he's quoting from a Mishnah, from a Gemara. Rabbi Akiva says that he has been traveling, and in commercial seaside towns, metropolitans, he's found that the people call the denomination Ma'a, they call it Ksita, and therefore we can understand what it was that Yaakov used to purchase the land of Shechem, where he's going to pitch his tent. So far, Rashi seems to be very friendly, very helpful, and it sounds great. However, this is where the questions begin. And remember, we say we're asking questions because these are going to lead us into what we're looking for. So Rashi is telling us kasita is a ma'a, which is the ma'a is a common biblical coin. However, it happens to be that Rashi is one amongst many others who found this question, what is a kasita, problematic. But Rashi is not unique, but is very different than the most common mainstream other translators of the Torah. If you had to guess which is a common translation of Torah translation, I'm not talking about the King James or something like that, which translation do we have printed in most Chumashim that translates the words of the Torah into the then spoken Aramaic? The answer is what we call Targum. Targum actually means translation. And there's a number of different Targums. There's the most famous one, which is printed in most Al-Chamashim, called Targum Onkelos. Sometimes it just says the word Onkelos on it, but it's the translation of Onkelos. And then you also have Targum Yemis and Ben Uziel. These are some very common, accepted translations who actually lived before Rashi. And Rashi references the Targum often. When he needs to translate a word, he borrows from the Targum. But let's have a look what Targum translates the same word, kasita. Don't forget, kasita is the thing that Yaakov paid 100 of in order to get his plot of land where he's going to pitch his tent. Said the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, translating this pasuk, Uzvan yasachsonas chakal defras tamon mashkene minyad ben Echamer avoid Shechem b'meya margalion. He purchased the part of the field where he pitched his tent from the son of Chamar, father of Shechem, for 100 gems. Margalion. Margalion are gemstones. So the Targum is translating the word ksita to mean a gem. Now that isn't so uncommon because the word gem is used for kshoit, which is beautiful, and therefore kasita could be understood, and the Targum is telling us that actually he paid 100 gems. Now I just want to point out that the 100 gems will be quite significantly more than 120 pieces. Right? 5 shekel is going to be much less than 100 gems. But Targum seems to be suggesting that he paid much more than that, and he paid 100 gems, which would be a significant amount. But let's look at another Targum. This is a Targum Onkelos, the one we mentioned earlier. And he uses a different word. He purchased the part of the field that he pitched his tent in the son of Chamar, father of Shechem, for 100 sheep. Now, sheep aren't quite as expensive as a gemstone, but they'd be more than a 20p piece. And 100 sheep would make sense because Yaakov is dealing with sheep. If we remember from last week, this was Yaakov's main line of business. He was extremely wealthy and his wealth came from sheep, and everything he owned was through selling off his sheep. And that was his first port of call for barter. And that would make sense, as Targum Onkelos, he paid off the plot of land with 100 sheep. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to say we have Kasita could mean Ma'a, according to Rashi, which means small amounts of money, or it could mean gems, like Targum Yonis ibn Uziel, or it could mean sheep, like the Onkelos translates. Okay, we're going to ask what makes Rashi choose the commentary he chooses. Plus, we're going to ask what makes Rashi tell us in a few words. He explains why he thinks Kasita is Ma'a. Rabbi Akiva traveling to seaside cities and noticing that people call a Ma'a Kasita. Rashi finds that necessary to tell us and what the message is in all those details in Rashi. Don't forget, our objective is that the answers to these questions should be a message for life. So let's read some of the other places where we find that the Torah does use the word Geira. This is in Pasuk and Shmois, telling us how much money each person has to date, and the Pasuk doesn't use strange words like Kasita. And generally speaking, when the Torah tells us money, it's very clear about what amount of money it is. So if the Torah wants to tell us about how much money it costs, he will tell us Geira, shekel, something like that. And Rashi's bothered by how come the Torah doesn't tell us what it is. Geira lashon ma'a, Rashi tells us right there. Geira is a very common word for the Torah to use. For some reason, the Torah does not use that word right here. So, our first hint, clue, to be able to figure out what the lesson the Torah is telling us in this week's Parshah, in this particular pasuk, is to notice the choice of words where the Torah has changed from regular terms that describe money and instead described it in an abnormal or a peculiar, a unique word, and that needed Rashi to translate it for us. But there must be a message, and Rashi is going to give us that message. In his short comment will help us understand. These are the questions we said. Why is it choosing exotic rather than a local translation? Why is Rashi suggesting it's not sheep and it's not gems? And if that's the case, why does the Torah not say the specific word ma'a or geira? Why does it use that word? And number two, why does Rashi relate the source of this translation? Why mention the story of Rabbi Akiva going on a holiday and traveling to the cities by the sea? What is that telling us? The answer is going to be by understanding Rabbi Akiva's reason for travel. Why do rabbis go on holiday? Why does Rabbi Akiva go on a vacation? And also, why does Rashi prefer to mention this? Before we read the next text, I'm going to ask you, imagine you are a 5-year-old kid and you read the Parshah. And the Parshah tells us that Yaakov is on his way home. He's not been home for 20 years. And he's going to meet his father Yitzchak. And your father Yitzchak lives in Gerar, which is all the way the other side of Israel. And he comes to town and he arrives at Shechem. And the Pasuk tells us that Yaakov now purchases a plot of land for 100 kasita. What might the discerning 5-year-old ask on that storyline? One of the questions might be, why is he buying land so far away from his father's house? If he's going home, why didn't he just go home? Why is he purchasing land here and settling here if he's not home yet? One of the other questions might be, why do we need to know how much he paid for the land? Are we like nosy? We're trying to figure out the stocks and the price of land there? Do we really have to know what he paid? I mean, the point is that he happened to own the land for whatever reason. And Rashi wants us to understand that usually the Torah only gives us details if it's part of the storyline. And when it's not part of the important details of the storyline, there must be a message that the Torah is imparting to us when it tells us a detail of a story, including the price that you pay for a piece of land. Let's just go back a few parashas and remind ourselves when Avraham Avinu buys the plot of land from Ephron, which becomes the Ma'ara Semach Beilu, the burial plot for his wife. There's another example where the Torah tells us how much he paid. And Rashi there explains, why do we need to know the amount? And he says, because it was an exorbitant amount. Avraham paid so much money for a little piece of land, it was unheard of. He was ripped off through the roof for paying that piece of land, but he knew that. And he paid top dollar. And he said to Ephron, I'm taking no favors. I don't want the slightest amount of money to be anything between me and this piece of land, in which he was going to use as a burial place for his wife, and eventually become the burial place for himself. But Rashi tells us the reason why the Torah gives us that detail is to demonstrate just how dedicated Avraham Avinu was. But why does the Torah tell us here? He paid 100 ma'ah, 100 pennies. I mean, for a small piece of land to pitch a tent, that makes sense, especially if he's only there temporarily. So he bought a cheap piece of land. What's unique about this? Why do we have to have this information? And the answer is going to be, particularly because it wasn't a large amount, but it was a kasita amount. Let's read some text over here. Here we have a passage that tells us, Yaakov came safe to the city of Shem, which is the land of Canaan. When he arrived from Paddan Aram, he camped before the city. So he's not home. He's on his way back from Paddan Aram. He's got a long way to go still to get home to his father. But he first comes safely to the city of Shem. And that's when the next passage told us that he bought and purchased the land that he stopped at. So because he comes safely to the land of Eretz Yisrael, the first thing he does, as he arrives into town, he purchases a plot of land. And Rashi wants us to know, he didn't need this piece of land. He did need to demonstrate a closeness, appreciation, and the love for his homeland, for Eretz Yisrael. And the way he found an expression of that feeling towards Eretz Yisrael is to not be a guest, to not borrow, to even rent. He owned a piece of land. There's a beautiful Rambam that describes how Yiddish people throughout the generations always appreciated and had a longing for Eretz Yisrael and taught their children the same. And Yaakov Avinu, when he comes back home after being away for 20 years, wants to demonstrate that. Have a look at this Rambam, where the Rambam writes, our greatest sages would kiss the borders of Israel and its stones and roll in its dust. As the Tehillim declares, behold, your servants hold her stones dear and cherish her dust. Our sages taught the sins of those who dwell in Eretz Yisrael are forgiven. As the Pasuk says, the inhabitants will not say, I am sick. The people who dwell there are absolved of sin. The Yidden who hold on tight to the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael are absolved of Averis. And even one who walks 4 cubits there will merit the world to come. Those buried there receive atonement, as if their burial place is in an altar of atonement. So Rambam has some glowing words for the appreciation and the closeness that people, great people, feel for Eretz Yisrael. Rashi wants us to notice that Yaakov Avinu, even though he's not home, has already right away done something to demonstrate just how dear Eretz Yisrael is. And where do we notice that? It says Rashi, Meya Kasita. He purchases a piece of Eretz Yisrael, not because he needs it, but because Meya Kasita. He's buying it with Kasita. What is a Kasita? So we've read Rashi at face value, that a Kasita is a Ma'ah. But actually, if you read Rashi a little closer, you see that Rashi is not saying that the kasita is the ma'ah, but kasita, ma'ahs are sometimes called kasita. What does that mean? The word for ornaments, decorations, things you might wear in order to look beautiful. This is another quote we were supposed to read. This is a quote from the Ibn Ezra, who talks about owning a plot of Eretz Yisrael is like owning a portion of the world to come, which will explain why Yaakov wanted to own it. What is a kasita? A kasita is something that adorns and makes something look beautiful. Where's it gone? Jacob purchased his land in order to own a piece of the beloved holy land of Eretz Yisrael. This is the side we're looking for right here. Kashoit atzmecha. It means to make yourself beautiful. And kasita is a reference to a collector's coin. It's a small amount of money. It's not a fancy golden coin, but it's a collector's coin. Maybe because it's very shiny. Maybe because it's got sentimental value. Maybe because it comes from a faraway place and people like to collect it. So its financial, monetary value is little, but it's beautiful. It's a gorgeous coin. Says Rashi, Yaakov Avinu paid a small amount of money, but in very precious or beautiful type of currency. Why is that important? How does it help us and what difference does it make to us? The answer is going to be that although Yaakov Avinu wasn't going to get ripped off and pay a lot of money for a piece of land that he didn't really care for, other than the fact that it was a piece of land anywhere in the Holy Land of Eretz Yisrael. So his grandfather was paying top dollar and paid enormous amounts of money. Yaakov wasn't going to do that. But he was trying to demonstrate an appreciation for Hashem's holiness and his holy land. And therefore, he purchased a piece of land with 100 kasitas, 100 of his precious 20p pieces. Maybe the ones that have, instead of a picture of the Queen on it, the King Charles on it. I'm joking. Maybe he had shiny coins. Maybe he brought with, most likely, collector's coins that he had from Mesopotamia, from Padan Aram. But he used special types of coins to buy that. Says Rashi, you want to know how to translate kasita? Don't call it gems, because that would be in a ripoff. And it wouldn't explain as to why he's even purchasing the land, especially for such exorbitant amounts. Don't explain sheep, because that wouldn't explain what's unique about this particular purchase. Why is the Torah giving us details on it? Says Rashi, you know what this simple understanding of this purchase is? The simple explanation is that Yaakov Avinu is using precious material. He's not losing money on it, but he's demonstrating care in this particular purchase. He's going to use collector's money in order to show appreciation for what he's purchasing. What I'm about to get with this purchase is more valuable to me than 100 coins of precious coins. This is how we understand kasita. Kasita, like the word kashoita, making beautiful. This was a beautiful purchase in Yaakov's eyes. Let's read it inside. To explain the significance of this coin, Rashi quotes Rabbi Akiva. When I traveled to the cities of the sea, they called Ma'a kasita. The word kasita connotes kishutim, ornaments. Why would the least valuable coin, the Ma'a, be called an ornament? This demonstrates that sometimes, even if the monetary value of the coin is insignificant, it can have sentimental value when it's used as an adornment. They are therefore called ornaments. If they are special, then the only thing that makes them special, and what makes them special, is because they are unique. And using the foreign name kasita informs us that Yaakov, out of love for the land, used special coins to purchase a parcel of land in Israel, coins that doubled as ornaments. Okay. So, to answer our first question, why does Rashi choose the word kasita to mean coins? Because it helps us understand why he's even purchasing the land. He's not making a real sale for an exorbitant amount of money. He's doing a minimal purchase. He's not losing money on it. He's a smart businessman, but he wants to demonstrate care for the land. And that's alluded to in the word choice. He's not using ma'a or geira. He's using preciousness to purchase something more precious. Ornaments to demonstrate a love for Eretz Yisrael, hence the word kasita, a foreign term, a non-Israeli term, a term that would have come with him from far away. Where is this heading? What is the message for us? We're against the clock again. So it says the Sikha, beautiful as ever. There is no such thing as a negligible compliment. Every compliment is worth giving. Where do we see this from? What teaches us this? Says the Rashi, I want to tell you how I ever heard that kasita, ornaments, is a term used for ma'ah. And where did I learn this from? Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is a very, very special individual, and Rashi mentions him by name. One of the rules of Rashi is Rashi doesn't mention sources. He's not here to teach academic, advanced teachings in the main text. He's here to teach younger people. But by mentioning and evoking the name Rabbi Akiva, he brings to the fore an appreciation of Rabbi Akiva, who he was. Rabbi Akiva is the famous man who, when his students, 24,000 of them, were trying to disrespect his wife, without blinking an eye, he turned around and said, "How could you speak like that to this woman? She was in rags. She looked like a pauper." But he said to them, without blinking an eye, "This woman, it's in her honor every bit of Torah that I learned and that you learned." And this is the same Rabbi Akiva who made a big announcement that he's going to bring a golden Yerushalayim, a carving of Yerushalayim, as a hairband for his wife because she was so special. This is Rabbi Akiva. This is Rabbi Akiva who finds every opportunity to describe that even people who may look less, but if you appreciate their beauty, they go much more than you could imagine. And the same is true with what Yaakov is trying to teach us in this particular story. What is Yaakov teaching us? And what is the Torah telling us about the amount spent? It's telling us that this is beautiful currency. What's beautiful about it? Has sentimental value and has true value. This is why we have to understand Yaakov Avinu comes to Eretz Yisrael and he wants to demonstrate. Okay, this is the piece of the Gemara. When Rabbi Akiva traveled far and wide to discover novel ways to put fellow Jews in the best possible light, Rabbi Akiva went on holiday. What did he do when he was in holiday? He looked around to find ways to help us appreciate small things about what we might call small people. And by highlighting them, this was the other quote that we had in that same journey. Rabbi Akiva has a second quote. But this Rabbi Akiva is the type of person, wherever he would travel, there was one vision in his mind. What am I going to find in this new place that will allow me and train me to notice more good about more people? And that's why, whilst he was traveling, he picked up the word kasit could mean ma'a, which in itself is already a lesson. Ma'a, a small amount of coin, could be called a kasita, an ornament, an adornment, a beautiful. And then he brought that back. And Rashi uses that to explain that kasita in Yaakov's story also means the same thing. It's not about how much money worth it was. It's about how much he put his heart into it. So we have two lessons. One lesson from Yaakov and one lesson from Rashi. The lesson from Yaakov is to be able to express and share care, even if it's not a large amount and it's not a highly expensive item, but it could express the care and the love that goes into the way it's presented. We have another lesson, a deeper lesson from Rashi himself. And Rashi wants us to know that if we ever travel to a new place, like Rabbi Akiva, and he'll mention it in specifically, wherever we go in life, or we say it the other way around, wherever life brings us to, especially when we're on vacation and we're in places that are not our regular turf, and we're going to notice and hear things that we don't usually hear, what should we be looking for? More relaxation? More discomfort? Of course not. As Mrs. Abrams said, we're coming back home. What should we, yes, be looking for? The answer is for more lessons about how to notice the good in another person. Learn from Rabbi Akiva. When he's traveling to seaside cities, what's he picking up? Messages like kasita, ornaments out of little pieces. And that's why we go on vacation, because we'll go to a different country and we'll see how they treat their children. We'll see how they keep the streets clean, or we'll see how they stick to a schedule, or how they study Torah, or how they have such warmth. And that's what we'll notice. We won't notice what they don't do right. But by noticing goodness, it trains us to come back home, be more on that wave. And when we're on that wavelength, that's what gives us the koyach to learn from Akiva, to learn from Yaakov Avinu, and to be switched on people. Hashem should give us the brachas. We should be able to go on a lot of vacations healthily, and we should come back with a lot of koyach and be able to do what we need to do with a good gesund. Thank you for joining.
Open up a good few books and you can go on a trip every day. It's fantastic.
I thought you were going to say on Zoom. But yes, books also work. The printed work hasn't gone out of style totally.
Books do work. I can go to a different country every single night. Fabulous.
Safe travel to your different countries through the books.
With you with your flight.
everybody. Thank you very much for joining. Have a blessed week.
Have a good week. Bye. Thank you.